Welcome to the Liberated Feminine Podcast. I'm Lucy Lampy, your host, and today I have a special guest with me, Tara Vogel. She is an internal family systems informed coach and certified astrologer who weaves her knowledge as an elementary teacher, natural parenting educator, and mom to help other moms stay connected to their kids and themselves via the cosmos. She believes that knowing your astrological natal chart and your child's natal chart is one of the greatest tools for better understanding ourselves and our children. And Tara believes in a holistic approach to living, weaves her knowledge of holistic living, the polyvagal theory of the nervous system, and the IFS method of psychotherapy into her astrology sessions. So without further ado, Tara, welcome to the podcast. And anything that you would like to add to your intro and your big three. Share us your big three.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I want to add to the introduction is I'm not an elementary school teacher anymore. I was in my previous life before kids, but my most important job is just being a mom. I have 3 kids. I'm also a full-time astrologer, and my big three: Capricorn Sun, Libra Moon, Pisces Rising, and I always say I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart, so that kind of hides in the 8th house, but it's there, and I feel it a lot. I think you're a Scorpio, right?
I'm a Scorpio rising. So I'm a Capricorn sun and a Cancer moon and a Scorpio rising, but also a lot of Scorpio. So, I think when you have those placements come in those, especially in your 8th house, you said you have a lot of Scorpio. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, actually, I would love to begin with how our chart shapes how we parent. Do you see certain trends with that?
So let me just, what I love to do is I love working, my niche is parenting astrology. So it's really taking astrology and allowing it to inform you to be a better parent to the humans that you are, in charge of for a little while down here on the earth. Mm-hmm. So first, the way that I like to, a lot of times moms will come to me and say, I'm having an issue with my kid. Can you read their chart? Now, my preference really is to work with her chart first. Because when we are true to, I see when we're true to ourselves, and I see the natal chart, our astrological natal chart, as the soul's curriculum. I always, I tell the story of the Rainbow Bridge, my kids sliding over the Rainbow Bridge, landing here on Earth. My children also go to a Waldorf school, so it's part of the Waldorf to talk about, the being birthed and coming over the Rainbow Bridge. When they take their first breath, when we all take our first breath, that's, and that map of the sky, what the sky looks like when we take our first breath, is our soul curriculum. And in the ideal world, we would all do that. That's what our soul is crossing our fingers saying, we're going to do this one way or the other, and we can do it in an aware, conscious way, and you can be a co-creator in this life, or you can have life kind of take you and lead you where it may. And, I always advocate for leaning into the highest expression of your natal chart and, co-creating. We have a lot, I think, especially the consciousness that we're coming into now as a collective, we have a lot more co-creative abilities than we've had in the past. So I do love to work with the mom first and just get a sense for, is she doing what she promised in her natal promise? Is she staying true to herself? Because especially when we become moms, we can get way off course because we just want the best life possible for our children, and they require a lot of life force for us to parent them. So we can feel depleted, and we can feel, guided in different ways than, we can see it in the natal chart. But to answer your question, I love to work with a mom first to make sure that she's staying true to who she is. And then in the next session, working with the child and really working with the dynamics, like what what does she find hard? What's challenging? How old the child is? Because, everybody knows their sun sign, like I'm a Capricorn, you're a Capricorn. But for a child, they're, especially the first 7 years of their life, they're very connected to the moon. The moon is mother. So what template is she forming in them? Because our mother lives inside of us in our whole life, and she forms that lunar moon template. So is she meeting her needs? Is she taking care of herself? Is she resourced? All these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is such an important place. I love that you begin with that first with your clients and your sessions, because if we are not living true to ourselves and we're off kilter a little bit, or a little bit off the mission and lost ourselves, which we hear all the time, moms who feel like they lose themselves in motherhood. And I do feel that there is an element of losing an old identity, but not really losing yourself. You're expanding more deeply into who you are in motherhood, or at least we can. But I love what you said about the moon. I find that very true. For example, my third daughter, my oldest daughter, who's going to be 19 this year, she's a Scorpio moon. And we have a lot of conversations around the dinner table about astrology. And she was saying, the older I've gotten, the more I am my moon sign. I just feel way more connected to my Scorpio than my Sag sun. And I was like, yeah, I think we all see that. And then my third daughter, she's 11. She recently took everyone's charts and wrote them out into little scrolls. And I mean, the planets, the houses, the Black Moon Lilith, everything. And I was like, wow, she might grow up to really do this.
Yeah.
But it's helped to bring so much understanding, especially on how they process emotions. Would you say that as women who are mothers, when we take into account our child's birth chart, you mentioned the moon. Does this mean looking at their moon sign, and this is, how they process their emotions and their internal landscape, and how we can support them the best?
That is, because our moon is also mother. And so when you talk about your oldest daughter who has a Scorpio moon, that's her moon, but she learned Scorpio from you. That makes sense because you're a Scorpio rising, but it doesn't always line up that way. But she's learning how to transform, to really honor, to meet her needs for intimacy, to honor she's very deep, right? A Scorpio moon has a lot of depth. And what she said is, I feel like I'm becoming more of my Scorpio moon as I get older. What I would say is she's integrating her moon more. Yeah. She's more comfortable with it. It's like, and that has a lot to say about you, because you are the moon. You are the mother. You help with that integration. Because at the around age 21, the sun really kicks in, and we start to, for the next 21 years, like from around age 21 to 42, we're really in development of who we are and finding our purpose and our unique light that we shine. And that depends on having a really strong, well integrated moon, which is also our childhood environment and our family. So what happens in those first 21 years of life, really, that who you are is built on that. So, that makes sense that she's feeling more comfortable with that, and she's integrating it more.
Well, this is interesting too, what you say, that then from 21 for the next 21, we're exploring our sun sign, because now she's a Sag and she's going to travel. She's going to take some gap time and travel and see different parts of the world. And so, but integration. On that note of our moon, so I feel like a lot of time when people get into astrology and they're relating it to their kids or trying to understand better their kids' charts, what are some of the main places to look for clues in their charts?
Yeah, well, it depends. It's really the whole chart because the whole chart tells a story. But a place to start is the moon because my sweet spot for working with moms with kids is like the kids are still at home when we still have that ability to impact them by our parenting and our response that we have to them. Because if we can give a strong response to them, if we can see them for who they are, not who we want them to be, we can reflect that back to them. It strengthens that foundation. But the moon is definitely one of the first places to look because everything begins with the moon. Everything begins with the mother. Everything began in the womb. They were tuned into mother even before they were birthed into the world, So because our moon is always that's where our needs are. And our kids, they just want their needs met, especially by mom or the family of origin. So that talks about their needs. And then Mercury, talks about the kinds of words they need to hear, their style of communication. These are all very fast moving personal planets. And then we get into Venus, like the Venus years are 14 to 21. And that's like, I like you. I don't like that. That is not something that I like. This is like, I'm attracted to that. Friends, peers, like that interaction with others plays a really important role. I mean, it is fun to talk. Everybody knows their sun sign, but the sun is really in prime development when we're like your daughter is doing, going out and finding our purpose. That's different. It's like, it's who we are, and that may be different than our family of origin, but hopefully our family of origin has given us like a really good support system in those, first 21 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's, for me, when I started learning about astrology, and I started learning their charts and how they interact with each other. And I have two Sages and two Aquarius and a Leo. But the older two, the pair was Sag, Aquarius. And then 6 years later, I had another Sag and another Aquarius. So they have similar dynamics. And then there's a little Leo that was born last year on August 8th. But I find it so fascinating now, these past few years, really diving into the astrology and how, for example, my second oldest being an Aries moon, this year has been very intense for her. And she's 17 also. Right. She's very much in those Venus years. So for her to know, oh my gosh, everything's lit up in my chart in these areas has been really helpful. And I can imagine having known this when I was a teenager, and that would have helped me navigate so much with so much more ease and less judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. It is such a gift when they get older to be able to explain, well, that makes sense. And yeah, my daughter's almost 14, and we can have those conversations. Like, when she has difficulty with one of her friends, it's like, well, that would make sense because they're, needing to be in the spotlight. And that, it's really fascinating. It's like, especially as a Scorpio rising, you would appreciate that because we're so deep and complex, and honoring that in everyone, not just ourselves. But yeah.
Yes. And I love too reading your story about or getting glimpses into your story about your daughters and how astrology has shaped your parenting. Would you be open to sharing more about that and how it's impacted your family?
Yeah, sure. So I have three children. My first was, he was 3.5 when my daughter was born. And, I had the most amazing birth and pregnancy, nothing at all, out of the ordinary. And then, but when Eva was born, she was struggling a lot just to be here on the earth. Now she does have her sun and moon in Pisces. And so she was super sensitive, but it was kind of beyond that. And, fast forward the first 5 years of her life, we were really just trying to fix her to have her life and our life, definitely, because our life we were struggling. We were just, everything was around her needs. And first 5 years of her life, I mean, she officially got her diagnosis when she was around 5. Her diagnosis is cerebral palsy, but, like I said, it was a beautiful pregnancy and birth, but we were just trying to fix her and have her feel just more able to function on the earth and feel safe here. And then we ended up moving so she could go to a Waldorf school for special needs children, because my son was at a Waldorf school, which is a beautiful way of honoring the incarnating soul. And, everyone's different and we don't fit into a box. And it's this gentle, incarnation that we have, this coming into a body. It's not forced. There's not a lot of screens to jolt you in there. So we moved so she could attend a Waldorf school for special needs children. And, that's a very open-minded community. And someone had said, have you ever had Eva's natal chart read? And at that point, that was 2010, I thought, what is a natal chart? I mean, I know I'm a Capricorn and she's a Pisces and my son's a Virgo, but what else would there be to know? Well, I went to that astrologer and he had never met Eva, and he was just able to describe, of course, we can't see a diagnosis in a chart, but we can see points like where it might be hard and what would be what they need. I mean, especially, as a Pisces moon, she needed a lot of holding. I mean, she didn't walk until she was 4.5. So that, I was fascinated that he was able to describe her, and I felt like, well, she had this chart when she took her first breath before, anything down here on the earth. So she must be living this life she chose. And all I need to do is support her and honor this, life that she chose. I know that, for some people listening, they might be like, how could she choose, a diagnosis of cerebral palsy? But our soul, there's so much more than our ego can understand or even, make sense of. But, I do believe we choose our parents. I do believe we choose our circumstances. We can't, exactly how they're going to play out. We don't necessarily always know that. But, and so I became obsessed. All that Scorpio that I talked about earlier, I need to know astrologer. Did that, and I want to do this. I was an elementary school teacher before I had kids. I'm like, I want to support parents this way, because that reading gave me peace. And believe me, the first 5 years of her life, I was on a mission to do everything I could. I took that Capricorn son of mine, and she was my job to fix her. And now, I see her as a soul on a very different path. But I have the tools. I know when she's having a transit and how. What I can do to support her in that. She had a really big one last year that was really difficult, but I knew what was happening. And so I'm like, okay, Saturn, I hear you. Let me hold her in this way. So yeah, it's just been invaluable, not just with her, but all my children. So that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. And that's a powerful, reason to do it. I mean, nobody gets into what they do on accident, right? Or because it's the best career path available, but there's a personal pull. And your story.
Yeah, the important part of that story is before he read her chart, he read mine. I was like,
yes.
What? Me? No, what? No, that's not me. I was totally disconnected, and life was hard. I mean, I was really suffering. I was, I do have a lot of Scorpio. I do have a lot of 8th house, and so there was a liberation that was wanting to happen of me, that I was just wrapped up in her. And so I wasn't me, and I wasn't wanting her to be how she was. I just wanted her to be different. And so you can imagine that astrologer back in 2010 gave me the gift. I didn't quite know how I was going to be that person, because I had not been her for many years. As soon as Eva was born, she was struggling. And so he gave me back to me, and I definitely made some big changes in my life after a little while based on that astrology reading. I'm not sure. Okay. So I figured that out. And then I just allowed her to be who she was, and, not have mom trying to make you different. So the biggest gift I can give her, it's the biggest gift you can give any child,
No, truly, because they already picked their assignment in life. so to speak. And so then, and they chose us because the way I see it, like for example, my second oldest daughter, who's the Aries, she's an Aquarius sun and an Aries moon, which is an interesting combination. She's very fiery, but she's very much, she's very ADHD. I mean, I don't say, I mean, she definitely has ADHD, but I mean, we're like just all over the place. I'm like, that's so Aquarius of your mind. But then she's this Pisces Venus, and when she falls in love with someone, she's just, everything's about them, but then she's so combustible. And her learning about herself, it very much reminds me, even though her chart is so different than mine, she reminds me the most of myself. And so it helps me to bring more healing to my inner teenager, being able to help her through her things and her transits and her seasons, and all of them, but she's just the one that mirrors me and has always triggered me the most. So she's been a big gift. But I, living into my design was the biggest gift too. It was like a permission slip. Like to your point, oh, this is really who you are. Stop trying to be the way your mother was. And I still catch myself at moments thinking, oh, well, my mom, she loved arts and crafts and she loved singing little songs. And I don't. I never did. And to accept that that's not who I am has been so liberating. And then what do I love to do? Let me do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Our kids, I mean, there is that quote, they are our greatest teachers, but they show us the parts of us that have not been integrated. And you said, she was my biggest trigger, and you being able to see, but when I can actually allow her to be who she is, I get to do the same for my inner teenager. It's a beautiful, and something called Parenting Astrology School, and we get into that and working with the nervous system. It's because it's really hard to be the best parent you want to be when your nervous system gets hijacked by your kids, who are really here to challenge us and to push our buttons. They don't do it on purpose. It's just the design of, Earth School. So they will show us the parts of us that that weren't allowed, or we don't like, or weren't held when we were younger. And so there's this beautiful dance that we can do when we understand everybody's astrology. And so you described it really well.
Yeah. Because with that, what would you say, when you said Earth School, I know you mean Earth School as in coming into this earth. But for a second, I thought, is this the name of your program?
No, we learn so much down here.
Yes. And when you're working with parents and their kids, what are some common things that come up? The most eye-opening things, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
I mean, I always love to ask, we'll talk a lot about their natal chart. It always lands, or it's exactly, because our kids they just are who they are. So it's like, it's actually easier to read a kid's chart because they're very connected to that soul curriculum that they have. They have conscious parents that are asking to get an astrology reading. They haven't had, life tell them they had to be different. But, I do ask the question, what's hard about being Jacob's mom? Or what's the hardest thing about being Madison's mom? And the thing that they tell me is the exact thing that wasn't honored, allowed, held, integrated when they were young. If they're going to tell me, I don't like when they scream, I don't like when they cry, it's the fire was not allowed when they were growing up. The water was not allowed. And so, and just like you said, that child is here to help them with their own emotions and their sensitivity, or, whatever it is. And when so the first, in order, if they don't like, their kids' water, the first place to go is to work with your own emotions and your own sensitivity, and to realize that they're giving you a huge gift and they don't need to be any different. I can see it in their chart. They're here to be water, to be sensitive. They have Neptune on their sun or something. That's who they are. And if you can understand that, that's a huge gift to be able to, oh, my child is sensitive. They chose to be that way. I feel your sensitivity, my sweet one. I sense that you really felt what that man wasn't saying. Like, you're so intuitive. Like, to be able to do that is really strengthening for their constitution, but it also, they're giving us a gift of being able to learn how to hold our own sensitivity that we have no reference for. We have no template for, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And it's very much that, like with my second oldest, it's what really irritated me about her before I started learning about how the chart reflects everything, was that she was just so much. And she was so intense. And I hadn't owned that part of me. And all my Scorpio was really begging me to, just be at home in the intensity and be okay in the alchemy. But I look at our baby, who's a Scorpio rising like me. God help us. Leo sun, she's so extra, and she's so just so extra. And my partner and I were both, aware of astrology in our charts and how things interact. And so we'll look at what's happening in the energy today, what's going on, because she's not teething, she's not going through this and this. And it's pretty on point, even for a little baby.
That's what I do every day on Instagram, is just to show up, and this is kind of the weather today, so your kids may be this way or this way. And then because they're so connected to the moon, their bodies are more water. Their bodies hold more water than adults do. So and they're in their moon years. Mm-hmm. So it's a parenting hack to know, okay, the moon is, like today, we have a new moon in 2 days as we're recording this. Everybody needs more downtime. Moon's about to move into Taurus. There's more cuddling. They're slowing down. Like, if we're rushing them out the door, you're going to have meltdowns. And so you can use our dear Mother Moon as like a really good parenting hack.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah, especially now I know we're building up to that Taurus new moon. And that is the vibe. We just want to be more cozy. And here in Lima, we're in fall now, whereas in the Northern Hemisphere, it's spring going into summer. So the weather's more dreary. It's more gloomy. We're just like, let's have soup and stay in bed.
Yeah.
So it supports that. But also, Tara, you mentioned something about working with the nervous system. And I'm curious, when you work with people, do you approach it differently based on their astrological makeup? If they have a lot of fire versus a lot of air or water or earth, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we're talking about the nervous system, I'm really like, our nervous system gets laid down in those very early years, when our moon is in development. So when we work with the nervous system for a child, but mostly in parenting astrology school, I'm working with the parents. I'm looking at their moon, and we, in parenting astrology school, we're looking at like what was going on, whenever you were born and your family of origin, like that impacted the way that you move through life. I see the lens of the nervous system through the polyvagal theory of the nervous system. This work of Stephen Porges. So, we'll map our unique nervous system, because we all have a very, there's lots of nervous system regulation techniques out there. There are whole Instagram accounts around it, but not everything works for every nervous system, because ours is very unique. And the wiring of that really is shown by the moon. So, that's the general gist of it. And the moon also tells the story of our childhood, and we can see the story of the potential of how that soul, the child receives their childhood, like what they need, and are their needs met. So yeah, it's more like I'm looking at the astrology, and then we start there, right? But we're talking about what was going on back in their childhood.
Yeah. So it's also taking into account the imprint on their nervous systems when they were in those formative years, right? Because maybe they're not living in their design at all because of that. Actually, my partner, he's a very good example. And we've talked openly about this because he has more Leo than I've ever seen in anyone's chart. Oh, wow. And a stellium in his third house in Leo. Almost every single one of his personal planets are in Leo. And yet, because he wasn't allowed to take up space and be so expressive, and there wasn't room for all of that as a kid because of his parents' health and different things. He's still, letting himself unlock that. And I remember when I showed him, hey, look, your chart says you're actually maybe here to be this. He's like, can I?
Yeah.
It can be a little challenging. So do you also work with people in that sense to help them just be more at home with who they deep down know they really want to be?
Yeah, because the astrology is like gives you the permission to do that. Like, I mean, that's what it was for me. Like, oh, I'm really here to tap into my sexuality and sensuality and the juiciness of life with all that Scorpio. But that, that got like locked away. That was like not, I didn't have a template for that. And so when I had the permission, I remember kind of maybe like your partner is like, well, God, how do I do that? And then we go on the journey. There's a lot of like transits that we all have in like late 30s, mid 40s that get us more on our path, and it doesn't have to wait for that long, but if we're off our track, if we're off our path, those, Saturn opposition, the Uranus opposition, the Pluto square, they can push us back on if we want to, right? We always have a choice. We always have free will. We can be like, nope, sorry.
Yeah.
And then life feels bland
or extra difficult.
And hard. Why? And not, not honoring what you signed up for. So yeah. Does he have his sun and moon in Leo?
No, sun and let's see, Mercury, Venus, third house, like 5 planets in the third house on his, well, hang on. I just remember Mercury, Venus, Sun, Moon is in Taurus. So he's very steady. That's the other thing is I experience him as his moon. I forget that he's a Leo. I have one Leo and that's my 10th house. And so it feels more Leo than he is, he says, because of the midheaven placement.
Yeah.
But
it's fascinating when you can dive into a person and just the way that their life has played out. I mean, we're changing the conversation of being able to understand who your child is and then how you show up as a mom or a parent reflects that. You're reflecting them back to themselves. They make sense to you. And then like our fears can go away. They can be there and be like, oh, but that's actually about me. It's not there. They don't need to be any different. Yeah.
This is important too, because it helps us to get a better idea, I feel, on how we can support their nervous systems. Because, for example, if I know my teenager has an Aries moon, then maybe she needs to go blow off some steam. She needs to go back to the gym. She needs, to just rant to a friend that she trusts if I'm not available. But my son, who's a Virgo moon, he really just needs to know the details and he wants to know the plan, and that helps him feel safe. And me with the Cancer, it's like, oh, so much feelings. It's just so deep. So this helps too. And I feel like even with my youngest kids who are 10 and 11, they're learning a lot about astrology and their makeup, their design. And that's helping them to navigate so much better this really otherwise awkward time. It's, preteen time. Teenage years, they can be so difficult. But yeah, so what would you say is one of the biggest benefits, if it hasn't already become obvious to everyone listening, to work with someone like you to take a deeper look into someone's own chart and their kids' charts? What are some of the biggest, most, tangible impacts that they have?
Well, like lots of liberation, lots of freedom for, both, if we're just talking about mom and kid, to be who they are. And, it's like when you talk about, there's a lot of talk about nervous system, and because there's all this we're aware of it now more than we ever were. And it's like our kids learn how to regulate their nervous system through us.
Mhm.
So if we're out of alignment, if we're not honoring our needs, if we're not resourced, that's the template that they get. So, astrology is, yes, you can use astrology to learn what your needs are, who you are. It helps you to make sense of your past. Like, okay, so I have intense childhood in my chart. I don't personally have that, but like, okay, and so that makes sense. So I chose that. My soul is learning something. It's like astrology gives you also the information and the understanding of the way bigger soul picture. And when things make sense to us, it's like there's research done on this. His name's Matthew Lieberman. But when things make sense to us and we can name like, oh, I'm the emotion, then like our amygdala starts to calm down and then our body can calm down. And it's like, there's so many distractions these days with screens and like everything is moving fast, especially with the astrology. Like to be able to have a mom and dad or two caregivers that are like, okay, it's just this. Well, that makes sense because of this, and that, if they
Mhm.
connect it to astrology. But it just really gives you a big permission slip for you to be who you are, to let your kid be who they are. It's empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very prescriptive. It's very
Mm.
detailed. There's a lot of symbols that I'm looking at in a session, and in parenting astrology school, which I teach every like February, we start. There are a lot. It's a 12-week course because there's a lot of astrology to understand, and then we map our nervous system, our unique nervous system that got laid down when we were young, and yeah, it's a huge help.
Yes. And I love that you approach this with the nervous system and the details of the chart, obviously way past beyond just the sun sign. And I can just imagine how powerful this is for all the families who do this with you, because I know the impact that just having the knowledge of what transit is happening in what area of my kids' houses and in mine. It's kind of like if you know the baby's teething and it's like, oh, she's just fussy because her gums hurt. Versus, like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know why she won't stop crying. Why won't she sleep? Why won't she wake up every 30 minutes? Why? It helps bring a little bit more clarity. And we could all use some of that in these times. So
Yeah.
I very highly recommend. And I love your Instagram page too, by the way. I love the way that you talk about all of these things and what's happening with the climate astrologically on a day-to-day basis. So where can people find your work and how can they work with you if they're ready now?
So luminaryparenting.com is my website. You can see my offerings there. I mean, I do astrology readings. I have an astrology community. And then I also teach parenting astrology school, which is like my foundational work. That's a 12-week course. But then I also teach astrologers how to read children's natal charts because there's a lens that I'm looking through when I look at a child's chart versus an adult's chart. So, and yeah, empowering parents to be able to make informed decisions and to help their kids just make sense to them, because it's really what I got when, I sat with that astrologer back in 2010. It's like, oh, okay, this all makes sense. And now I have this information and I just need to support her in the way that she's showing up right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is so liberating. So for those of you listening, and you can get a sense of how liberating it is, it really, really is. and you do such a specific line of astrological work and service in the world, Tara. So thank you for doing what you do. And for anyone who wants to, take a peek, also, I'm going to link her Instagram in the show notes so you can follow her there. And any final words, any closing thoughts, Tara, from today?
No, I think we covered a lot. We agreed we were not going to go really long because, especially with Uranus moving into Gemini, it's like our attention span can be short.
Very short.
But yeah, we have covered a lot. I mean, there's a lot more that I dive into in my courses and the readings. And, for people that are skeptical and like, I don't know about that. Like, how could the map of the sky when we took our first breath even tell us about ourselves, let alone our kids? I say just like get a reading with a professional astrologer and you'll be like, okay, I don't know how it works, but it works. And
it's eerily accurate.
Yeah, it can be. It's a really good, way to lens for which you to be able to see your kids and life and just the cycles that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I think too, we work through these different, trails because of Uranus being in Gemini. And as my son said the other day, he looked at his watch and he said, "It's been 30 minutes and we've covered 5 topics. This is really a lot, Mommy." It's like, there's my Virgo moon right there. So yeah, more of these moments. So thank you, Tara, for being here today and sharing your wisdom with us. Yeah.
Yep.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. So we have made it right on time. Look at this. Goal met. And of course, check the show notes for more. And as always, here's to liberating your wild feminine heart.
Be the best. I'm a little porn star. You bring the boom, I bring the bass. Give me a taste, they me the waste. I'm your little plaything. I got the feeling this original scene's gonna take me way deep. Are you